Good morning, everyone. This next session is going to be, our presenter is Ms. Sylvia Terziati. She works for the U.S. Geological Survey. She is the North Carolina and South Carolina Associate Geospatial Liaison and GIS Specialist with the South Atlantic Water Science Center in the Raleigh office. She's been there for 28 years, and I've known her for a lot of those. So, and she's a good egg. So you're in for a good talk. So, Sylvia.
Okay. So this is going to skip around a little bit because I'm just trying to kind of get the highlights of some of the program areas that we're dealing with. Which way should I look? I guess I'll look at this one. So USGS National Geospatial Program, which is where I work kind of half of my time, is responsible for three major areas: elevation, hydro, and the US Topo product. And so we'll be touching on those. So let's talk about hydro first. I think a lot of people have used the National Hydrography Dataset. If they haven't, they've at least seen a topo sheet with the blue lines on it, and they know what it is. What we're doing is we're enhancing that kind of state by state with stewardship agreements. We've worked with North Carolina in a lot of different ways over the years. Right now, we're discussing how to update it again, and we will see. We've got all sorts of great data out there now. The other component of the hydro data set is the watershed boundary data set, which is the HUCs. And if you were at the last talk, it was a great introduction to what a HUC is, and all the way down to the HUC 12 is what we maintain within the watershed boundary data set, or the WBD. The NHDPlus is our kind of combined system, which incorporates the hydro and the elevation together, and it's a very powerful modeling tool that can incorporate land-based features and the drainage to a stream, all defined within catchments per stream segment, and we're updating that now to the 24K level. And just a little bit more information about the National Hydro Data Set. Right now, we have a national 1 to 24,000 scale layer, but again, we're updating it with local data. And in North Carolina, we have a lot of new data up in the mountain area. Well, it's not that new anymore because it's over 10 years old now. But with all the new LiDAR that's coming online, it's a great opportunity, I think, for us to start thinking about updating our streams data set so that it is a better representation on the ground of what's on the ground. So, watershed boundary data set, again, is a nested basin model, so that we start with the larger regional areas. 03, again, is what flows to the South Atlantic. 06 is another part of our state which flows, it's called the Tennessee River Basin. 05 is the Ohio. Those are all incorporated within North Carolina. Then each one of those 02s are broken down into smaller levels, and each one of those have unique codes, unique names, and unique ways of defining them. And again, with WBD, of course, they're defined by elevation. So as LiDAR comes online, there's a lot of opportunity to update these as well. Because right now, most of the WBD boundaries are based on a topo sheet, or basically 1 to 24,000 scale divides. But we have updated some. There's still a lot of room for improvement. Now the NHDPlus is kind of I don't know, how many, have people been using the NHDPlus? Anybody in here? Yeah, some, a little bit. Well, it's been around for the 1 to 100,000 scale for a long time. What's new, I guess, is the 24K resolution version of the data. So instead of having a network that's a 1 to 100,000 scale, it's now based on the more detailed 1 to 24,000 scale. And we say it's 1 to 24,000 scale, but it's actually, if there's data, hydro data that was developed from LiDAR, like we have in the mountains, we actually have data that represents the full extent of that stream network. So not just at the 24K scale, it's closer to a 1 to 12,000 or so. So this is a little bit more information about the NHDPlus. So what you see here is the catchment area. Each stream segment has a catchment that defines it. And so any feature that falls within that catchment area can be identified with the stream that it flows to. So if you had a non-point source of contamination, you would know, because it falls in a catchment that surrounds a stream, where that contamination might potentially go, unless it's in the groundwater. And, you know, there's lots of other things you can consider. But and so we use this a lot for modeling, water quality modeling. But now, again, instead of just being at the 1 to 100,000 scale, it is at a much more defined scale. So it's also going to be, it has, hundreds, you could probably say thousands of attributes that are associated with each one of those catchments, and since it's with the catchment also to the stream, everything from flow, land cover characteristics, soil types, just hundreds and hundreds of attributes that are associated to those catchment areas already and can be downloaded. But the main product can be downloaded just off of our national map site. Another kind of new thing is that we're allowing people to suggest edits to NHD WBD and NHDPlus high-res through our Markup App, and it is kind of system agnostic. You don't need any kind of special software to do it. You which has good and bad sides to it, but basically you zoom into the area where you know that there's an issue with the network, or with a WBD line, or even with attributes on the high-res NHD Plus, and you can literally mark up with kind of your cursor, you know, this needs to be fixed, and they send it in, and someone takes a look at it, they send it to me, I take a look at it, I send it to other people because they need to look at it, and then eventually it'll get fixed. But this is kind of a new way that we can accept edits or edit suggestions. And now we're going to skip over to elevation. So our 3D elevation program has been around for a few years now, called as 3DEP. It's been very successful in, I should have an old map of before 3DEP came online, of just the coverage of LiDAR nationally. This is now what's been created and in the works as of this month of LiDAR data that meets the 3DEP standard. One thing you probably notice, and I don't know how to use the pointer thing here, is this is our phase 1 LiDAR. I don't know why it's not showing up as green. That should be green. That's there was a little bit of an issue with the way that the DEMs were delivered, but it's all been accepted, and for some reason nobody has updated the map there. But what you should be able to see is there's a lot of LiDAR out there now. A lot of it meets the 3DEP standard, which is the LiDAR base spec. There's now a 2.0, but most people refer to the 1.3 LiDAR base spec. And the goal and I also want to stress this is a very cooperative program. We work with states, we work with other federal agencies to get the LIDAR collected and processed, and lots of contractors. The goal is to have national LIDAR coverage at QL2, a lot of North Carolina is at QL1, every 8 years. We're not going to make that, but it's a big country. And also IFSAR for Alaska, even though much of Alaska has also been collected with LIDAR data as well. And I'm probably missing stuff on this slide, but one thing I wanted to show was kind of a cool new tool. It's the new download and visualization tools that are available online. We've moved a lot of our point cloud data onto Amazon Cloud services. So what we have now are a couple of different ways that you can visualize that data. So you can find this on our USGS site. Just go there and go to the 3DEP site, and you'll be able to find the link to this. And then it'll bring you to this page. You can then click on some area that you want to visualize. And then you have two choices for viewers. And it will bring up the entire point cloud for you to take a look. This is the first viewer that was listed. And so it shows you, all the entire point cloud. So you're seeing the canopy, you're seeing vegetation, you're seeing houses, you're seeing everything. And what you can do is kind of tweak some of these things to have it display in different ways. And this shows you the other viewer with imagery draped on top, so you can actually start to see the 3D point cloud. And the nice thing about it is really fast. Really fast. You can kind of, if it was a live demo, I'd be twirling it around and all of that stuff. But yeah, and it's all out there, huge data sets. And you can also, I believe there's a download function from both of these sites. Otherwise, you can go to our normal download page and download the information as well, or the whole point cloud, or so on. And this is also another way to get to the data and get to the inventory of all the LIDAR data. I know it's crazy. There's so much LIDAR out there now. But North Carolina is here. This includes, this is a joint, we developed this with NOAA. All of the LIDAR data that has been inventoried, not necessarily publicly available, but most of it is, for LIDAR elevation and bathymetry is available for you to look at and see whether you can download here. So this is just an example on the coastal plain of North Carolina. You basically zoom to where you want to go, click on it, and it will list the data sets that are available wherever you click. You can then click on that, whichever data set you're interested in. It'll give you, a bunch of different attributes about that data set and whether or not it's publicly available, the quality level, who collected it, and that kind of thing. Basic metadata. It gives you links to the full metadata, and it also, most importantly, gives you links to how you can download it. So that's a very nice feature. So you can just go here and figure out, okay, what's the easiest way to download it? Here you have 3 choices. You might know that, well, since it's available at NOAA, that's actually the easiest way to download it. I'm going to go there. So the other thing I just wanted to tell you about, and some of you I know have been involved with this, so you know about it already, but the 3D Nation study. In 2011, there was a NEA study, which was a National Elevation Enhancement Assessment, which was a big national survey to get to collect information about LIDAR, well, not necessarily LIDAR, but elevation needs nationally. And that led to the 3-DEP program and lots of funding opportunities because we could show exactly what states and local and federal folks needed from elevation data. We're in the process now of updating that. It's called the 3D Nation Study now, but we have a number of people, about 15 state and local and academic participants from North Carolina. We have a restriction on the number that we can ask to participate. And we're now in the validation phase of finding out what those needs are. This is just an example of one respondent from North Carolina, the types of products that you might need. So we're going to take this kind of information, and, if something is required, that gets obviously a much higher ranking than, if something is just nice to have. And then all of that gets compiled, not just for North Carolina, but for the whole country. And we end up making recommendations, both summaries state by state, but also recommendations for the whole country and the whole program. So 3-DEP may change because of the results of this study. And the other component to this study is actually bathymetry, both near shore and lakes and rivers. So that's another aspect that we hadn't really explored before, but that's of major interest to get into the NHD and into 3-DEP, to have the be great if every stream had bathymetry associated with it, every lake, but, that may take a while. Just to tell you about another study that we did, which was very similar to the elevation one, was completed about a year ago, which was the Hydro Requirements Benefit Study. So we're doing it for elevation now. We've completed it for the hydro side. And a few things came out of in that, and one of the big findings was that everybody would love to have hydro and elevation integrated better, and I certainly would love to have that. And a lot of people are already starting to develop the stream networks from LIDAR because they need those streams to match the elevation. So a stream isn't mapped, so it's going up the side of a hill and so on. So that is kind of our future direction. NHDPlus is the first step in that. It does fuse and integrate the hydro and the elevation, but they don't always match perfectly, and it's forced to match. What we'd like to do is start developing elevation, or develop the hydro, or collect the hydro as we're collecting the elevation, and that would be the best way to make sure those two fit. So what that leads us to is something that's going to be, you'll probably start seeing this new term, the National Terrain Model, which is the integration of hydrography and elevation. And this is just my kind of take on where things have gone. We started with these two silos of elevation and hydro. And now, there were issues when elevation got a lot better, hydro didn't. We're starting to look at how to put them together, and eventually we'll be up here where everything is nicely integrated. The first step in that was the optional hydro breakline standard that's included with our LIDAR base spec. Has a lot of good information about how you might collect that data, why it's important, and the types of attributes you might want to put in it. We're actually, before you go and adopt the whole thing, we're right now making some changes to that, and you can talk to me if you want those. So this is kind of where we are underway. We're right now writing this document. I've got a hard deadline for March 31st. So it'll be done. Won't be reviewed yet though, but it'll be done. And then some of the other things that we're doing to support the effort. I just wanted to briefly touch on this US Topo product too, because that's our last kind of big area that we're responsible for. These are just the types of things that we've added to the US Topo product. Now, everybody was familiar with the paper topo maps. Now it's all digital. And I think one of the coolest things that's been added are all the trails. Well, not all the trails, but a lot of the trails, especially in national parks, and the camping areas. So you can download these. And when you download them as a GeoPDF, that's kind of a nice way if you want to print it like you would a map sheet. It has all the caller information. It also has all of these things that you can turn off and on. So if you don't care about the trails, you can turn them off. If you don't want this, kind of hard to see image, you can turn it off, etc. It has GeoTIFF up here. That's coming. But they will be available as GeoTIFF soon, so you can also bring them into to any of your GIS systems. And you can also get to that same information through the national map, where you can also just look online and see the trails and the camping areas and all the features of the US Topo. And I think that's it.
We have a little time for a couple questions.
Sure.
Just wanted to mention that the redep just passed 50% of the nation coverage.
Yes. QL2, and a big chunk of that's now becoming QL1 as well. It's pretty exciting. Yeah.
The Western North Carolina stream bed mapping project, a high density, and then is that really, there's some of that incorporated in NHDPlus, is that correct? I mean, is there plans to incorporate more of that in there? Like, I think some of the French bras in there.
Yeah. Ideally, it would be incorporated. Right now, we don't have a steward that's responsible for converting the line work into full NHD. So we hope to include that soon, someday. But yeah, the plan is certainly to include it. Any better resolution data that's out there that meets the horizontal and vertical accuracies, we'd love to have in the NHD. So yeah. Okay.
Thank you all for coming.